G'day, and welcome to Gone Guy TV. Today we're going to do something a little different. Today we're going to bake bread, and not just any bread, for which I do have a passion for sourdough. We're actually going to make chocolate sourdough. And the reason I'm doing that is there's just not a whole lot of recipes out there for it. I mean, only 200 or 300 on YouTube, so we can always use another one. So I'm just going to walk us through it, and here we go. So we're going to start off by measuring everything very carefully. And if there's one thing I learned from YouTube is if you're going to bake, you bake with measurements of weight, not with volume. So anyway, we will start off today with 400 grams of bread flour. In this case, it's King Arthur bread flour. To that, we're going to add 100 grams of whole wheat flour. Again, King Arthur. Anywhere between 10 and 12 grams of salt. In this case, it's just good old Leslie's salt. You can use sea salt, Himalayan salt, whichever you prefer. In this case, I'm just using good old Leslie salt. And we'll have 50 grams of extra dark chocolate, and use what your favorite is. I'm just using this Hershey's, quite frankly, it's what was in the pantry. So 50 grams of that goes in. And finally, for the dry ingredients, 50 grams of brown sugar. Now, again, you can use what you like. Cane sugar is fine. I've seen recipes out there using honey, but for my taste palette, and at least my family's, the brown sugar seems to do the trick. So with all with all the dry ingredients in place, we do what my friend Sam does, and we mix. And we mix. So I kind of mix twice here, once in this bowl, which is my all-purpose bowl. You'll see I'll use it in a couple minutes to measure the liquids. And then I transfer it to this big glass one, just a quirk I have. And I do that to make sure everybody's awake in the house. There we go. Give it another bit of a mix. And we can set that aside for right now. The only other dry ingredient we'll be adding, by the way, is chocolate chips in a bit when we start to do the stretch and folds. And I'm just using these Nestle's dark chocolate. Again, you can use milk chocolate, semi-sweet chocolate. We just happen to prefer the dark. Oh, back over here, I'm using filtered tap water. And it is at room temperature, a little higher, maybe around 80 degrees. To that, I will add 400 grams. This is the tedious part. And I'm going to correct myself. In normal sourdough, I use 400 grams of water. However, since we're adding an extra 100 grams of dry ingredients, I do add an additional 20 grams of water. So it'll be actually a total of 420 grams. There we go. 420. All right, and you'll be amazed to see the difference a single gram of water can make in a bread dough. Now I'll be adding the final ingredient to this mix, and that is my freshly fed and ripe sourdough starter. This is about a 2-year-old starter, and you can see it's fairly nicely bubbled. Got the nice dome on top, and smells all the world like sourdough starter. I know there's a plethora of recipes out there or instructions on how to get your starter going, so I won't bore you with that one. But it is important that it is fed and ripe. I'll be adding 100 grams of this. Now, there's a lot of discussion and differing of opinions on when and how you add the starter to your dough and when you add the water. I like to actually mix it all together in the very beginning. Oh, there we go. All right. Now comes the fun part. I got my dry, I got my wet, I've got my King Arthur spatula. I make a little well here in the middle, and we add it all together. Now the purists will go out there, raise up their sleeves, and start digging in with their hands. And eventually we'll do that, but not in the beginning. I simply use this scraper to fold the water and dry mixture onto itself and combine it to where everything is wet. We don't want to have any dry. And it just takes a couple of minutes here. And it's not that I'm opposed to getting my fingers into the goo. It's just, it's a little easier to clean the dough off the scraper than it is off my hands. And we don't want to have to lose any dough. And you can see it's still pretty crumbly, but it is starting to come together and get in a uniform color. And it's amazing how 50 grams of dark cocoa powder can turn the dough as dark as it does. And so we're just scraping the sides and flipping it as needed. Now, another thing I did that the purists sometimes suggest you don't, and that's I added the salt to the very beginning. I added the salt into the dry ingredients before I did what is called the autolyse, whereas we simply let the dough rest and hydrate. But I've seen a number of folks out there, the one I follow the most called the Food Geek, I think I'll have a link somewhere down below. He did a lot of testing on when and how you add the starter and when and how you add salt. And from his testing, he pretty much determined that you can all add it at the same time and it doesn't impact the quality of the bread, especially the rise and the gluten development. So as you can see, this has turned to a lovely, lovely brown mix. And still managed to get some on my hands, but that's the beauty of sourdough. It is a human contact sport. All right, now here I just get a little bit of wet. There you go, a little wet onto the spatula here, and that'll just help me get all the dough that's stuck to the side into the dough ball. So we're just gonna scrape it in there, get every little bit in, and kind of smooth it down. There we go. And you'll see it's pretty well formed into a dough. It's very shaggy, absolutely no gluten development. It just all kind of falls apart. But that's fine. That's right where we want it to be. So now we'll do a 1 hour autolyse, which, if you haven't read the book, simply means that's the period of time where the dry ingredients hydrate with the wet ingredients. and start to all come together. So we'll simply take this bowl of dough, excuse me, cover it with the greatest invention in baking, known as the shower cap. Simply set it aside at room temperature, let it wait for an hour, and we'll come back and check on it. All right, see you in an hour. Boom, 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 boom. Bum, 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 bum. Ah, okay. There we go. 1 hour. So we talked a little earlier about using the scraper versus the bare hands, but for this part of it, the hands get in there. So again, if you read the book or seen the 452,672 YouTube videos on making sourdough bread, you know that typically after the auto lease, traditionally is when you would add the salt with maybe a little bit more water. And we didn't do that. But the one thing I do like is the idea of after the auto lease is going in and giving things a good final mix to make sure that everything is incorporated and that there are no dry spots. So that's what we're doing. We're just getting it in there, giving a good last mix, make sure there's no dry spots.
Oh, yeah.
And that the dough has come together. And it has. But you'll see it is still a little bit taut now, but still kind of crumbly. So with that, we'll wash off the dough that sticks, bring out our high-tech shower cap, and now we'll let it rest for another 20 minutes. See you then. And we're back. Okay, it's been 20 minutes since we did our last mix, and that's what we're looking at like right now. And you can see it's gained a little bit more strength, a little bit more elasticity. So now we can start our stretch and folds. So I always get my hands just a little bit wet. This can be still a very sticky dough. And we'll just do a series of stretch and folds. Now, for that, we just simply pull up and fold it over. Pull up and fold it over. And I'll do that 6, 7 times, just kind of get a feel. And you can start to see the elasticity now is really starting to come in. When you remember before, pull on it slightly and it just come apart. So usually I end up doing 3, sometimes 4 sets of stretch and folds at 30-minute intervals. And after this first one, and after we let it rest for 30 minutes, we'll start the first inclusions. And by inclusions, I mean chocolate chips. All right. And for good measure, we'll do a coil fold, just because I like saying that name. And now you can see how smooth that dough's starting to look. All right. Back on with the ever-present high-tech shower cap. And we'll see you back here in 30 minutes. And back we are. It's been 30 minutes. Let's see what our dough looks like. Ah, beautiful. You see it's become very smooth. The elasticity is really improving. That gluten's really developing nicely. And it's got a nice little shine to it as well. So at this point, what we want to do, before we do the stretch and folds, we're just going to stretch it out. Kind of just, maybe bring it up over the sides a little bit. Just stretch it out so we can get some of those chips in there. So all I've done is just kind of flatten it out on the outside and take our dark chocolate chips. Got to give it a taste test, make sure they're fresh. Ah, yeah, they're good. Okay. So I don't really weigh out or measure the amount of chips. Um, for reference, I'd say we're probably using close to 150 grams of these chocolate chips. Just lay them on there, and now all I'm doing is just stretching and folding, just like I did before. Going around on the outside, scooping up a bit. And then I'm just going to stretch it out here a little bit along the edges again, just to get more surface area, and toss a few more of those in there. Press them down a little bit, and then continue on with the stretch and the folds. Now, there's another way to do this, and I've done it both ways, and that's take the dough out of the bowl, lay it out on the counter, and then just stretch it out into kind of a large square or rectangle. And that method works just fine as well. So it's really which way works best for you. I'm a little on the lazy side, and I like doing it this way easier because I only have to clean up the bowl, which I have to clean up anyway. If I take it out and put it on the counter, then I've got to clean the counter and the bowl. So whichever works best for you. My motto is, if the easier it is, the better it is. Okay, so we've done our stretch and folds. You can see all the chocolate chips are in there. Now, we're going to go back, the same shower cap over the same bowl, and we're going to wait the same 30 minutes. Then we'll come back, do another stretch and fold. Alrighty, so here we are, another 30 minutes. Let's take a look at our dough. Nice and shiny, well formed. Get a little moisture on the hands here. All right, let's see how she feels. Oh, nice. Yeah, really got some nice structure here now. Look at how well that holds together. Even with the inclusions in there, which that's one thing we have to kind of decide on. Do we want to add more? And I say, I don't know. I think you can add more chocolate chips. I have 4 granddaughters, and I suspected if we held a vote as to whether more or less chocolate chips, they'd all agree to more. All right. Beautiful. Yeah, well, should make sure these still taste good. Yeah. Don't want to put any bad ones in there. All right. So we'll continue with the stretch and folds. And this would be the third one. So what we'll do at the end of them is to check and see if we've got enough structure. And the way that I've learned to do that is what's called the window pane test. I sure didn't invent it. I think I've heard it from just about every sourdough maker. Some like it, some think there are other ways, but for me, it seems to be consistently accurate. So, to do that, I'll just take a look here, pull up a piece of the dough, stretch it out, and see how thin it can get before it breaks. And it kind of broke. So, got almost there. I'd say we give it another 30 minutes, and then we should be ready to do proofing, which would be a good thing because it's getting on to be 6 o'clock. And I don't want to be up till midnight waiting for this dough. So, on goes the shower cap. Let it sit for 30 more minutes, and we'll be back. All right. Here we are. 30 minutes this has been sitting after 3 stretch and folds. And we'll try a last stretch and fold here. And then we'll check to make sure that we've got the dough ready for its proofing. And again, we'll just work around this very tight ball right now. Now, usually with just a regular recipe of sourdough, 3 stretch and folds is plenty. But when you add inclusions, uh, sometimes it just slows down the gluten development or interferes with it. And also, if you recall, we've added 2 other dry ingredients, the sugar and the cocoa. And that brown sugar sometimes will interfere with the protein development, the gluten. But this feels real nice. This dough feels super smooth, super tight. Oh, let's give it one more little stretch down here. See the old window pane. And oh yeah, real nice. Very nice. So what we'll do now, just a little coil fold there so I can smooth it out on top. Get all that chocolate chip mess inside. Rinse off the hands real quick and prepare our proofing basket. And I use these little guys. They're fabulous. As it turns out, with the amount of ingredients I use, the dough will come right up to the bottom of that line. So all I have to do is watch for it to rise up between there and there. And it's very easy to spot the growth inside the proofing basket. I do lightly spray with an olive oil, especially with this chocolate sourdough, because the dough, even though it's come together quite nicely, it's still a bit on the sticky side. So I'll just pick it up, and it goes, and then I just gently kind of tap it down so that it's laying relatively flat, and fill all the corners. All right. And as you can see, like I mentioned before, the dough basically comes right up to right there. And I'm going to wait for it to get about halfway up. And then I know we can go into the pre-shape and then boule it and put it in the refrigerator. So this will probably take about 4 hours. I typically just put it in the oven off. The oven's off, of course, with just the light on. And in about 4 hours, it should be ready to for its pre-shape and final shaping. So I'm going to go watch a football game, and then we'll see how things are in a couple hours. Hang in there, guys. Well, welcome back. It's been about 4 hours, almost 5 hours. So thanks for hanging in here that long. 11 o'clock at night. But yeah, good football game, though. Good football game. Yeah, somebody won. At any rate, so now we've finished our proof. You can see where the dough has come up considerably. Got a nice little bubbly surface going on. So it's time to bring it out, and we're going to do our pre-shape. First thing, just get a little bit of wet on the table here, because dough's still a little bit sticky. Not too bad, but I'll let this pop right out of here. Oh, nice. And don't want to waste any of these chocolate chips. Pop those in. And if you know sourdough or you've seen sourdough made before, the idea is to pre-shape this into a ball, so it'll fit in a bowl, and get some surface tension. And all I do is slide it over the wood. And you can see how that's tightening up. All right. The idea here is to just bring the dough together and get some surface tension. All right. So that'll do it for right now. We let it wait 20 minutes and rest. We'll do the final shape in the bowl, in the refrigerator, and then bed. So, see you in 20 minutes. All right. Well, I have a confession to make. And you probably notice things look a little different right now than they did in the previous couple of minutes. And that's because, well, being a content creator is hard. Being an elderly content creator at 11 o'clock at night is even harder. So when I was finishing off my last loaf, which was actually yesterday, and I reported on that in this video media, I forgot to hit the record button. So what I wanted to show you was still the last step of what I did and how it differs from a regular sourdough final shaping. And so just to backtrack, this particular loaf has already gone through all its mixing, obviously, uh, flip and folds, stretch and folds. Okay, it's getting on to be 11 o'clock tonight, too. And I've also done the proofing, and I've done the preliminary shaping. So here we are. So what I'm going to show you is what normally I would have done to the loaf. And then in a couple of minutes with the second loaf, I'll show you a better way, at least better as it works for me. So here we go. So, all right. So this is the second loaf that I had prepared. Same recipe. Again, it's the lighter Coco, so it doesn't look quite as dark as the one I did yesterday. But so the previous dough, I did flip it and stretch it, and you saw that it lost more than a couple of the chocolate morsels in there. And, you know, they're tasty. Want to save them. So I forego that when I do the sourdough with chocolate, and I just simply do a second tightening of the bowl using a hand and a damp scraper, like this. And you can see it's gotten nice and tight, good surface tension. So take another bowl, a little bit of the rice flour, and one more of these, nice and tight, and in it goes. Flour and all. All right, once more, the high-tech shower cap. Leak it up because there'll still be a little bit of rise, and into the refrigerator it'll go. Probably, well, it's 11 o'clock. It'll get at least a good 18 hours in there before I bake it. And I'll be sure to show you the results of that. So, thank you. All right, and welcome back to Guy TV. It's now almost 18 hours since we last shaped the sourdough, the chocolate sourdough, and placed it in the bowl. And from there into the refrigerator, where it's cold proof now for, like I said, pretty close to 18 hours. So now comes the scoring and placing into the oven. Pretty straightforward. And for that, you don't get to look at my face, just the good looking dough. Here we go. So here I'm prepping for the score. You'll see I have some parchment paper down. Bring the bowl with the dough out. Set it on the parchment. And using the Lam fancy razor blade, do my first score. And then, because I can't help myself, I'll just add a couple of decorative scores, make it look like a little flower. Yeah, it's just a me kind of thing. And once the scoring's done, we'll go ahead and pull the preheated Dutch oven out of the regular oven, which is set at 500 degrees. And the parchment paper and the dough go in. Cover it up. Set the timer for 26 minutes. 26 minutes. and let her bake.
Tick-tock.
Tick-tock. And after 26 minutes, we pull out the Dutch oven, take the lid off, excited about how nicely risen the dough is. Then we'll set the timer for 16 minutes at 450 degrees. After the 16 minutes, don our ever protective gloves. By the way, these need to be very long because guaranteed you'll burn yourself otherwise. Out comes the dough, beautifully cooked, and onto a cooling rack where you can admire the handiwork for about 3 to 4 hours before you cut into it. Otherwise, the dough could turn pretty gummy in the middle. And here we have the final loaf and the beauty moment. That's the cutting it open. You will find that with the extra cocoa and the extra sugar, it'll be a little denser than normal sourdough, but you'll still see lots of nice, fragrant, open pockets of air. And overall, it is a pretty light dough. But the overall proof of the bread is in the tasting. And the nice thing about this particular loaf with this recipe is that even though you've got chocolate and chocolate morsels, it's more savory than it is sweet. In fact, it's pretty much for adult tastes. Some kids, well, they just don't think it's sweet enough. So that about wraps it up. Good recipe, good bread. Thanks for joining us on Gone Guy TV. See you next time.